And I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Ed Sero. Mr. Watson is in a breakout room. Okay.
All right, Mr. Ed Sero.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Briscoe is present. Gregory, can you unmute yourself? Confirm you can hear us. Can you unmute yourself and confirm you can hear us, Gregory?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Your Honor, this matter comes before the court for a warrant quash. It's an arraignment. I'm ready to go on the arraignment. I'm not sure what the city's position is technically on the warrant quash, but they're asking the court to set bail on the arraignment. So I'm not sure it's procedurally relevant. But as to the arraignment, we're asking the court to waive formal the charge and true plea of not guilty. No arguments to probable cause today. I believe it was previously found. He is eligible for the public defender to ask the court to directly appoint Feldman Lee to represent him. I'm prepared to argue the issue of release at the appropriate time after the city makes its recommendation.
All right, thank you. Sir, is your true and correct name Gregory Lamont Briscoe?
Yeah, and I'd like to talk to you too and tell you some things that are going on too.
Mr. Briscoe, the court will give you an opportunity to speak at the appropriate time.
No, I already know. I'm not talking about the case. I want to tell some other things.
Okay. I wouldn't recommend that, but let the court go through the courtroom proceeding. And then if you want to say something, when she gives you the opportunity, you're certainly permitted to, even if you have the right to remain silent.
All right, so Mr. Briscoe, I'm just going to ask you some questions first, and then I'll give you an opportunity to speak in a moment, okay?
Okay.
All right, is your date of birth September 19th of 1961?
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Briscoe, I just want to remind you that on the matter that we are proceeding to arraignment on, it looks like you read through and signed a document called Advisement of Rights. It talks about all the constitutional rights that you have in this matter. Do you remember reading through that and signing it?
Yeah.
All right, and did you understand the rights that you have in this matter?
Yeah.
All right. And so I just want to also remind you that you have been charged with one count of driving while license suspended in the second degree. And the maximum for that is 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. And do you understand that as well?
Yes.
All right. So my understanding from Mr. Atzero is that you're waiving a formal reading and entering a not guilty plea. So I'll enter a not guilty plea at this time. Probable cause was obviously already found. And so that will remain. I know that you want to tell me something, Mr. Briscoe, and I just want to remind you just to protect your rights and make sure that when you make any statements, you make them knowing the rights that you have. Just reminding you have a right to remain silent. And if you were to choose to speak, which you do have a right to speak as well, I just want you to keep that in mind, particularly relating to any of the things that you're accused of, because any types of things that you say about that would be used against you. The prosecutor is here and is hearing everything you say. And so I just remind you of that just to protect yourself, okay?
Yeah.
All right, and so it sounds like there's something you wanted to tell me, and with all of your rights in mind, what did you want to tell me?
This is what I want to say to you. You know, I had court on the 19th and I had this court on the 20th. But I was very sick in the hospital with corona. And the lawyer for, because I got 2 tickets, the lawyer for Edmonds, they did the court without me in there. And I meant to get in contact with you guys to let you guys know that in the hospital too, sick with the corona. But I was just too sick. And so after I got out of the hospital, I immediately called and set up a bench warrant squad. Now, also, I know I got a warrant in Kent. And I've been trying to get a hold of that lawyer for the longest. I haven't gotten time. What I did do was right here on my phone, I went to the driver's test and the written test and passed it. And I went to go in to get my driver's license, and they gave me this right here. This written right here showing my written warrant, my Kent warrant is holding my license. So I have to go get that squashed in order to get my driver's license. So I have been working on my license.
Okay.
So, you know, but when I got sick, you know, it shut me down. So, you know, and I understand, you know, me having a warrant, possibly one bail on me, but, you know, it wasn't my fault, you know, that I got corona, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And now I'm not hospital for almost like 4 days now. And like I said, I immediately got in contact with the guy. Because
Okay.
I want to step off to, I'm trying to get my driver's license back so I can move forward. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
I appreciate that information. It for sure helps us understand kind of everything that was going on. And I also want to tell you, I'm glad that you survived the corona and that you're here to tell us all of this information in general. So why don't I hear next from the city? What's the city's position with regard to the warrant quash?
Thank you, Your Honor. As I understand it here today, the court's going to quash the warrant, then we're just going to address whether or not bail is set or they're released on condition. So I guess at this point, no object to the quash itself, but we do have a motion for remand when the court's ready.
All right. And I forgot to mention also for the record, I am going to directly appoint Feldman and Lee to represent Mr. Briscoe. And so why don't I hear what the city's argument is with regard to, I want to make sure I understand what the city's recommendations are. I'll give Mr. Adsaro an opportunity to address anything that he hasn't been able to yet after that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, the failures to appear are obviously troubling to the city, just in general. The failure to appear is not really the thrust of the city's concern with Mr. Briscoe. It is a concern, but it's not the main concern. But as you look at his warrant tab, you can just keep scrolling in terms of how many times he's failed to appear over the last 30 years. But our position in terms of bail, Your Honor, just looking at Mr. Briscoe's history, he's currently pending, if I counted correctly, and there's so many charges, I might be off slightly. But Mr. Briscoe has 5 pending driving while suspended second-degree charges. Throughout his history, he's been convicted 17 times of driving suspended second degree. He's been convicted 9 times of driving suspended in the first degree. He's been suspended off and on for the better part of the last 25 years and continues to drive in violation of Department of Licensing rules and other court release condition rules. So the reason for our request for bail, Your Honor, our request for remand is not so much the warrant, it's the interference with the administration of justice by Mr. Briscoe's continued decision to ignore or not understand Department of Licensing and court conditions. So at this point, we feel bail is necessary in order to ensure that administration of justice.
All right. And of the pending driving while suspended related charges, looks like this alleged data violation is 12/2 of 21. Are there any that are subsequent?
Let me try to get logged in. Jabs is
It's
very
problematic.
slow today.
Mhm.
See if I can reload it and have better luck. Just bear with me, Your Honor.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm fine, no, it ain't no.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly, I do know that I think later that day, he was arrested in Edmonds for driving suspended second degree. I think that's the Edmonds matter he was talking about earlier. But I unfortunately can't get into Jabs right now to give you more details
Okay.
about that.
All right. Let me hear from Mr. Adsaro.
Your Honor, I have a different perspective about this. He does have a lot of charges, but at one point he was a habitual traffic offender, and his history goes back almost as long as I've been alive. And he crawled out of the habitual traffic offender status. Looks like he's participated in multiple relicensing programs. At this point, his tickets are held up by the retest requirement, or excuse me, his license is held up by the retest requirement, the reissue fee, and taking care of his remaining ticket. So while I'll acknowledge his history, I think it's frankly shocking that he's been able to crawl this back close to getting his license. And I think it certainly speaks to his desire to be abiding by the law and having a valid license. That at the age of 60, he hasn't just given up on all this. I acknowledge that he has that open warrant he has to take care of, and it certainly sounds like he's expressed some frustration with trying to get that handled. But I would ask the court to take that into consideration. I also think it's important to note that as far as I can tell, I don't think any of his suspensions arise from any DUI related offense. I think if this was a case where someone was in HTO status or in D2 status because they've been committing a violent offense or even something like reckless driving, that would bolster the city's argument. Clearly, Mr. Briscoe's had to live with these issues for a while, but he is making efforts to take care of them. And I think the court should take that into consideration. I would also ask the court to consider, I think, there's certainly new decisions coming down and going around about the Department of Licensing and whether they need to conduct an inquiry into someone's ability to pay traffic tickets before suspending their license. I think it's a Pierce v. DOL case, which other courts are starting to look at kind of an individual basis. And this certainly seems like the sort of case, and Mr. Briscoe seems like the sort of defendant where perhaps but for his indigency and his inability to pay for these fines, he might have been able to get his license back some time ago. So I would ask you to take that into consideration. Mr. Briscoe understands that if he does drive without a valid license or insurance while this case is pending, court has the ability to set bail just like it could today. But we are asking you to release him, and we are asking you to order him to quash that open warrant and take his efforts into consideration under what's a pretty tough hole to climb out of. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Well, I'm taking a bunch of different things into consideration. One of them, I can understand why the city is making the request that they are with Mr. Briscoe's history, but I'm taking into consideration many of the things that Mr. Adsaro indicated, including that sounds like Mr. Briscoe has been working for years on digging himself out of a large hole. And even though he has made choices to drive and made that a little worse based on what the allegations that I can see tell me, I also do know that from the time that he would have been starting to become a habitual traffic offender to now, the way that the courts in general have viewed driving while suspended has changed drastically. And we all that have been working in the criminal justice system for many years understand how difficult it can be for someone to dig themselves out of that hole once they're there. And even if they weren't making choices to continue driving, it's a long way of saying that even though I do have concerns that Mr. Briscoe may fail to appear in the future, I am going to give him an opportunity to try to resolve this matter because he's indicated that he's been ill, that he is trying to take care of his warrant in Kent, and that he was working with Edmonds Municipal, I believe he said as well. So I'm going to go ahead and allow him to remain out on his own recognizance and take care of these matters so that hopefully he's able to deal with getting relicensed. That is and should be the goal of the courts. And my hope is that he is able to continue doing that. So I'm going to allow him to appear and I'm not going to set bail or ask for his remand at this point. But if Mr. Briscoe fails to appear in the future on this matter, I would expect that the court's mind would change. And that's because at some point we need to move these cases forward and get them resolved so that he can move forward. And so I'm going to give him an opportunity to do that. So Mr. Briscoe, I'm not going to set bail. I'm going to allow you to remain out on your own recognizance, but it's critical for you to appear at your next court hearing, which is March 8th. And that's at 1 p.m. It's a virtual hearing in courtroom 1, just like today.
And Your Honor, I believe me, I'm not trying to misquote you walk around with warrants. I've been going through stuff all my life. You know what I'm saying? Just in and out,
Yes.
dealing with, and I'm this close to getting my license. You know what I mean?
I know.
Well, Mr. Briscoe, you got counsel now on this case. So a copy of our information will get mailed to us. You'll be able to call and set up a meeting, and maybe we can even try to help you get in contact with that public defender in Kent. Okay?
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Briscoe, if we all put our heads together and if you work with your lawyer and with the court's understanding that it's sounding like you're closer than ever before to getting relicensed, and we'd love to help you cross the finish line on that. And so that's why I want to give you this opportunity to do that. So stay in good contact with your lawyer and be sure to come to court on March 8th for us. And you'll need to work on working on your other warrants. Your lawyer sounds like he's going to try to help you get in contact with the public defender down there in Kent too.
That's what I need, some inside help. some power.
Yep. That's what we're gonna try to give you, okay? Mr.
Okay.
Adsaro is gonna be on it, okay?
Okay,
All right, and so as far as conditions, of course, it's the same condition as you've always had in these cases. Don't drive, so don't keep driving, okay? Until you're validly licensed and insured. And also, I'll ask that you continue to make efforts to quash that Kent warrant. Sounds like you've already made a bunch, but keep on it, okay? We'll see you on March 8th at 1 p.m.
okay.
All right, any questions, Mr. Briscoe?
What's that lawyer's name right there? So I just said he's gonna help me. Is that my lawyer?
Yeah, Mr.
Is he my
Adsaro,
lawyer?
are you going to be representing him specifically?
I think Mr. Patrick Feldman, who's the partner of our law firm, will actually be helping Mr. Briscoe. So you'll have someone that's even more experienced than I am, Gregory.
Okay.
All right, so
well,
Mr. Briscoe, they're giving you the lead guy over there at Feldman and Lee to help you out. So get in contact with him and he'll help you, okay?
I mean, somebody's in trouble then, huh? I got the lead man, huh?
He probably just wants to make sure to help you get over the finish line, okay?
Okay.
All right. If you don't have any
All right.
other questions, Mr. Briscoe, then you're free to go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good day.